This is the Wilmette Park District public hearing of the Board of Park Commissioners Stormwater Retention at Community Playfields public hearing. It is Monday, March 11th, 7:32 p.m. First on our agenda is to call the meeting to order. I don't think we need a roll call vote since it's not an official meeting, or it's a meeting, but next on our agenda is communications and correspondence. There were some in the packet that everyone has in front of them. Did any other commissioners have any additional communications or correspondence that they wanted to share?
Yeah, I actually received one that was forwarded to me that I think the gentleman was trying to send it straight back to Steve. I thought I sent it to you, but I don't see it in here. John Snyder, does that name ring a bell?
Packet. It was in the initial.
Not in the packet.
It's not in that one.
Anyway, he was a...
Correct. He was against the project.
Correct.
Sorry, I thought we got that in the packet. We missed it. I did see it.
There's one in here. There's one right here.
It's
in the electronic.
It's in the normal board.
The one that went out Friday, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
It is in
But I
there.
do see one here as well from him.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I didn't... I
So
thought they
to
were
explain the communication and correspondence, there were two that were received in time to put in the packet that was posted online Friday.
Got it.
And then over the weekend, various commissioners forwarded in the same emails from two other individuals.
Gotcha.
Those have been printed out and handed to you. In addition, President Wolf had a conversation with the District 39 board president, and that's been printed out and is here for you as well.
So, Amy, where is this? Because I thought I went through everything today.
I have it in the electronic version.
Of what?
Of
the public
hearing.
Okay,
Stormwater.
gotcha.
It's like the first thing in there.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll find it.
John Snyder.
Oh, there it is. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. As Director Wilson mentioned, there was one in here from District 39 Board President Mark Steen just giving us their opinion on the project as well. So you guys can all take a look at that, and it kind of goes along with what we've been discussing. So nothing really new there.
No. May I comment on that?
Sure.
Mark Steen did make a comment about trees. If any trees did have to be taken down, might they be used for lumber? I've had projects where we did this. The Wheaton Franciscan Sisters, we built a new hospital for them. We took some oak trees down, and all the chapel furniture and altars and all that were made from that, and there was something kind of nice, sentimental about that. So it is, yes, it is. It's a thing. I just want to say that.
Great. I think, yes, thank you. Any other communications or correspondence? Hearing none, we will move along to recognition of visitors. If everybody here tonight can make sure that you sign in over there, we would appreciate it so that we can have an accurate record of everybody that was here. We will ask that anybody that would like to address us try to keep your comments to 3 minutes and make sure that you're addressing the issue at hand. This evening we are discussing the community playfields and the stormwater project. So we're looking for any comments you have, any input, and also ideas of how you'd like to see the park after the project is completed, any kind of enhancements that might benefit the community. We will reserve the right if there's a commissioner that would like to ask questions, but it won't necessarily be a lengthy back and forth. We're just looking for input from everybody that's here this evening. So that being said, is there anybody that would like to address us? Yes, ma'am. Over there in the green. And if you could state your name and address when you come to the podium, please.
Hi, I'm Carlene McAllister. I live on 323 Wilshire Drive East. I also have a blog called Sewers of Wilmette, which I started to try and analyze and then publish what I found about our flooding issues. So just a few comments tonight. This is, how much time does the community think the problem should be studied in order to see that it's a real problem? Maybe 6 months, a year. I have a list of studies starting 2009 to 2010, the separate sewer study. 2013, the sewer flow monitoring study. 2015, the separate storm sewer study. 2015 follow-up. 2017 value study. So this map showing the areas that flood, including the community playfields area where I live, that has come out from, starting in 2009. That's like 10 years of work to get there. how much time should a community have to find out about what the options are? Like 6 months, maybe a year? The 2015 study identified all of these storage tank options with numerous open houses, emails, and notifications on the Wilmette site. So from 2015 to now, that's like 4 years of notifications about possibly starting this project. So I think we've gotten here through a super long effort. It's really hard to organize all the families who are affected at this point because you can't motivate somebody like it's an emergency for 6 years. But we're still suffering. Just this past spring, a new family moved in. I'm not going to say exactly where, and flooded immediately and ended up with $30,000 in damages and what they needed to do to try and protect themselves from the next flooding. Another family moved into a brand new house that wasn't selling, that was up for rent. Before they could move in, the basement flooded. And then they had to go through a whole rigmarole with the owner to get the mold remediated and so on. So while this keeps going through the planning process, everybody in the neighborhoods are still experiencing issues over and over. Even though this is a 10-year storm map, many of us have experienced problems far more often than that. So it's just an ongoing, expensive health, financial issue. So I think the general outlines of the project, have really been studied in detail by Burke, which has a long history. And so at some point, I feel like we have to trust the project is going to make some sort of difference. And what we're aiming at here is just a basic level of storm sewer services that would be required in any place in the entire country before you built a new development. There is no place where you would get a permit to start a development with this lack of infrastructure. So we're not talking about, the super solution. We're just talking about bring this up to like a basic level of what would be required by any building code. So I know that people in my neighborhood and, the rest of the West Side are concerned. I'm excited if you actually manage through all these adjustments to make it cover 98% of the flooded areas. And maybe over the years, something can be added to bring it to 100%. So that is a positive development because at first the neighborhood storage was expected to cover far less. So I'm hoping that you can move through each of these phases and without going on to endless delays or, complicating the projects a lot. What I hear a lot of people saying is they kind of like the park as it is. If they don't notice that much eventually, they'll probably be able to put up with the torture of the trucks, the dirt, and everything until it's all fixed up again. And one last thing is the area where I think where this is being proposed, my kids have skated there in the winter before. Not through any program, just because if you know it, it's like flooded and it's a mess. So if that helps with that, that would be great too, like a bonus. And it is sad if, trees are cut down or this or that, but vegetation comes and goes. We had a tree on Glenview Avenue that just fell over during the middle of the day, no storm, nothing, just from age. So thank you very much for really moving on this. I know you're trying to get community input, but I do feel like community has had time to provide input. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Because I'm a commissioner who's felt strongly that we needed to take community input on this particular issue. And some people, I think, have speculated, what's he up to? And so what I'm up to is I want to take community input on this issue. I'm just going to read something. I put together some thoughts. I actually responded to an email, and I just kind of want to read it out. It says, although I'm taking a cautious approach to the village's request, this is my personal opinion. I do feel the village has made a compelling argument for the need to address the West Wilmette stormwater issues. Proper water management, drainage is a public sanitation issue. Society has known that for many generations. So I'm not disputing at all the need for this. I think the village has made that need known, and I buy into that. So here's the distinction. Wilmette Park District, in my mind, holds land in the public interest, so does the village. The village owns lands to provide basic services that we have come to expect from our community: fire, police, water, sanitation, utilities, transportation. The Park District holds land to provide recreation and open breathing space to our community and our residents. So we can't really justify our land use on a dollars and cents. It's a quality of life issue. So we hold lands for the public and the public interest for different reasons. So anytime I think we contemplate a significant change to this usage, using parks for these services, I think we owe it to ourselves and to each other to engage in this dialogue, to discuss the proposal. So I do know, being on the board, that our neighbors care passionately about their parks, and I just want to make sure that we don't create losers as we try to solve this problem. So I'm begging the community's patience while we do allow ourselves the opportunity to discuss this. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joel Feinstein. I live at 407 Wilshire Drive West, which is a short walk from the community playfields, and we've used them often growing up. And I just want to say that I also support what Carlene just said, that we should do this expeditiously and not delay the intergovernmental agreement. The only thing I would like to add about the final situation of the park is I haven't seen any layout of where the detention storage is going to be put. And I know those very large trees that are to the southeast end of the park are, I think they're cottonwood trees. They're sort of garbagey trees, but they're big and they're beautiful. And personally, I would hate to see them go. I think they're majestic, and I'd like to see them saved. And I'd also like to see more trees if possible. It's good for the air. It's good for the water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joel Feinstein.
Thank you.
Vote number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
The boy, and I'm at 244 Essex Place, so I am in West Wilmette. I've been in and out of town a lot, and so I have a couple of questions. First of all, I was looking at the map, and where is the community play field?
It's the space between Highcrest and the junior high, those big fields there.
Okay. And once this does get started, what kind of timeline is there for completion, or has that not?
I don't know that that's been determined yet.
Okay.
I think the village probably has that information, and we might be able to ask Dan or the representative.
Yeah, we can have that
engineer.
question answered maybe later on when we have our discussion.
And will there be, what kind of impact will there be on Glenview Road itself?
That I don't know either. We can ask that of the engineers later when we have our discussion, and we'll have the answer for you.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Joel Kurzman. I live at 2615 Greenleaf Avenue near a community playfield. Do I want to channel my inner 2013 or not? That is the question. That was the time in which I was very forceful in my advocacy that we should pursue stormwater improvements in West Wilmette. That was 5 years into a process in which many folks who are in the audience today were advocating for something, and that call for help was not answered. But around 2013, finally that started sinking in and began a process that has led us to here. So I do appreciate the call for patience. I can appreciate that to some extent, but on a most literal level, some people are not living to see the day. On Saturday, I attended a memorial service at First Presbyterian Church for my neighbor, Nancy Singer. She lived across the street from my home on Valley View Drive. She baked cookies for my kids. As I was getting off the ground as an advocate, she was always there for me. She was a slight but very powerful person. She always would say, "Go get him." And then she would ask me, "Did you go get him?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I went and got him." And of course, I was beaten down pretty good myself. But people like Nancy knew that improvements need to happen in our neighborhood. And in the 11 years in running that we have been calling for some assistance, you know, you've got your Nancy Singers, you've got your Betty and Byron Shermans. They had the house next to me on Valley View Drive. They were original owners. They weren't as encouraging as Nancy. They were a bit more on the ornery side, but they would tell me, "Oh, nothing will ever happen." And I'm like, "We'll get something done. We'll get something done." May they rest in peace. Both have passed. But what they did tell me, even if they weren't encouraging me, was how much things had changed and how much worse the situation got over the years, and how the neighborhood was suffering as a result. And they had seen it all, literally, as the first owners of that property. So people are literally coming and going, and we still haven't put a shovel in the ground. And I just think that, you know, do your process, do it as fast as it can, and let's get to work in service to West Wilmette. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address us? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Raquel Klibanoff. I live at 428 Wilshire Drive East, short walk from community playfields. And like many people, I've been troubled by the flooding in West Wilmette streets and basements for over a decade, since 2003, honestly. The village has been talking about this and acknowledging that it is a problem since, honestly, I lost track, at least a decade. There were $800,000 in studies to address this problem. First, studies, and then more consultants to do a second check of those studies. And this is a problem that has to be addressed. We've spent lots of money, close to $1 million, and that's not in damages. The damages is probably dramatically more than that to individual homeowners. I'm talking about what the tax dollars that have already been used to study this. We've spent so much time on this, and we've had a lot of time for community input already. Last year, in mid-April, so about 11 months ago, the village board voted to have the detention tanks. So that was 11 months ago, and again, no shovel in the ground. Before that, the community for years had so many opportunities to come to village board meetings. It was always a possibility that one of the options to address the sewer issue was detention tanks. I lost track of all the times they were proposing different locations, but that was always on the table. I also lost count of how many open houses and village board meetings and, let's come, meet the engineers and all of this that happened over the, 2 or 3 years before that vote 11 months ago. I cannot imagine anyone who, feels that they have not had ample time to discuss any kinds of concerns. Please move forward with this project. This is what government is for, providing basic infrastructure, roads, sewers, things like that. I understand the idea. I understand and support that we want to do, not just fix the problem, but fix the problem the right way and not cause other problems for other people. But please do this quickly. 11 months ago, this was voted on by the village, and we're talking about, it took this long to have this meeting. I'm really frustrated with how long all of this is taking. Please move forward.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Last chance, going once, going twice. Okay. That's on our agenda, the recognition of visitors. Next, we'll have a discussion on this. At this point, the board will be discussing comments and different issues on this that we've heard. Is there anybody that would like to start off our discussion?
Do we want to start with asking for the
Yeah,
answers to the
maybe
two
answer
questions
those
from
two
the public?
questions.
So, Dan or Darren or Matt, whoever. We received two questions this evening. The first one is, what is the timeline for construction? So if you could, run us through start to finish all the moving parts as best you can at this point.
Sure. So for the larger alternative, the optimized approximately 18 acre-feet of storage at community playfields. We're estimating approximately 4 months of construction. That is very, very weather dependent. When you're doing earth excavation, if it's too wet, that will stop the project in its tracks, and we're pouring concrete as well, potentially. So that would stop the project in its tracks until the weather got better. So we're estimating a ballpark of 4 months, but again, very subject to weather.
If I could ask you to expand it to all the parts, just so everyone has a good baseline of what started today with Locust Road, as well as then the 3 different sites, start to finish, and what years they're kind of slated for in concept right now.
So we haven't so much set years from like a 2020, but from like year 1, we're anticipating to be community playfields.
Okay.
And there will be some storm sewer work in addition to that in the surrounding neighborhoods. Year 2 would be Hibbard Park and storm sewers in that surrounding neighborhood, and then year 3 would be Thornwood Park. And there will be some storm sewer work not related to those parks that is tentatively scheduled to start this fall as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
You mentioned, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
You mentioned the community playfield project would approximately around 4 months, and I'm guessing that since you mentioned 2020, it would try to start it around the summertime when the school is not in session to kind of lessen that congestion?
Absolutely, yes. That's the would be the goal. Whatever year that one started, specifically because it's so close to the schools, we would target to have it be as little disruption to the school as possible. So targeting hopefully the day school gets out to start.
Okay, and as we mentioned before, we've been in contact, and I'm sure the village has as well, with the school district and would coordinate everything with them on timing as far as their construction projects as well that they have in the future and things like that.
That's correct. There'll be a lot of communication.
Great.
There was a request for an environmental study as well, and I don't know, that was last month.
Was in the packet.
That was in the packet.
You have
It's
a
in the
letter
packet.
from Darren's company outlining it.
I apologize.
And then the other question.
The other question then was, what impact, if any, will there be on Glenview Road?
A little bit difficult to know now because a lot of the, there's no storm sewers planned for Glenview Road, but as construction traffic is leaving community playfields, it will depend on where they're taking that excavated material to as to what impacts will occur on adjacent roads. But there's no storm sewer right now scheduled for Glenview.
So at this time, just construction traffic, no excavation and work to be
That's
performed?
correct.
Okay.
And can you, Mr. Feinstein indicated that he wasn't aware of what the layout was in terms of where on community playfields this would go. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. We're still very much in the preliminary phases, so we don't have any additional layout besides what we had shown here a few months ago, but it's tentatively set for the southeast corner of community playfields. There are some perimeter trees that we're hoping to avoid those perimeter trees, and we're also in the process of doing a tree survey out there as well.
And when do you anticipate the tree survey will be completed?
So they've been a little bit hampered by weather because in addition to the tree survey, they're also going to go out and make sure that there are no other environmental areas such as wetlands on the playfields. They're actually scheduled to start here hopefully in the next few weeks as weather turns better.
And, okay, I'm surprised by that because I would think we could go out there in an afternoon and count the trees, but I don't know exactly what's involved in a tree survey. How long do you think that would take once it gets started?
Oh, the tree survey for each park should take approximately a day or two. We've located the trees. What goes into the tree survey is identifying the species and the condition of the tree to make sure that we have absolutely all available information for each one of those trees that they've picked up in the topographic survey.
Okay.
Is there anything in the plan that would replace some of the trees if there are, I'm guessing some will have to be removed, that some trees would be replaced elsewhere in the park?
Yes. I mean, the goal as we work through this will be to come up with a tree preservation plan as well as a tree planting plan that is agreed upon between the village and the park district for each site.
Great.
And my preliminary count is approximately 17 large cottonwoods.
Well, are there or need to?
Are there, yeah. In the site area where this tank would go. Now, it may be plus or minus a few, but.
That's what's there, not what's coming down necessarily. Just what's there? Is that what you're saying? I didn't quite understand.
Correct. It's what he counted as being there.
Okay.
The exact location of the tank and the impact on the trees is yet to be determined.
Okay.
And the 4 months that you referred to earlier, I'm assuming that is prior to any enhancements or additional things that might be done on top of the tanks when everything is done?
That's correct. That would be for removing the soil, placing the tanks, placing the soil back on top of the tanks, restoring that, and then adding on top of that whatever was in the intergovernmental agreement.
So for the neighbors, it's not 4 months, it's 4 months plus something else.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
I would ask staff to consider what the impact will be to the community playfields in terms of how long it would take us to restore our activities on that. Because obviously, I don't know if it's seed or if it's sod or what, but let's kind of figure out what our game plan might be.
Could you, Steve, could you address what activities are, currently the use for that area?
Sure. That particular part of community playfields is the area closest to High Crest and closest to the parking lot of High Crest, which already is an area that is designed to hold water at the surface level. So we don't stripe any soccer fields in that area. We use the balance of the park. So what is typically facilitated in that area comes in the summer months with the camps that are housed at High Crest, and in particular sports camp. So we will have to definitely during times of construction and until it's ready for use, have to find other locations either within the park or work with the school districts for other locations that they allow us to use for our summer camp programs.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
More comments? I don't have specific
Okay,
questions.
thank you.
There was a question with regard to the impact to Glenview Road in terms of truck traffic. It was a very specific question. I don't know if you have the ability to answer that.
He just answered that.
I'm over here making notes. I apologize. I'm sorry.
And he said that while they're not digging it up, truck traffic, depending on which way it goes, may impact it more or less.
I guess one of the questions I have for everyone on this committee is, has anybody heard any ideas or things that from the community that people would like to see in the park after a
Sure.
tank is put there.
One of the PTA presidents had asked me about the possibility of putting a running track, installing that, and I know a couple of other people have said that subsequently. That would be a rather expensive proposition, and I don't know that there's Park District programming which could justify that. But if there were other organizations that were interested in footing the bill for it, then it may be that was a location that might be suitable for it.
The only comments I had was put it back the way it was. That's the only.
And then a lot of green infrastructure as well, in addition to. And I would say that as Steve described, the uses of it, the school also uses it, especially during recess, and the kids really appreciate, and the camp counselors, the shade that those trees afford during the hot summer months.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about the uses by the school, I did meet with a Girl Scout troop this afternoon who all talked about how disappointed they are when it's a nice day out and the ground's wet from the standing water, and they would love for that problem to go away.
That would be, I would agree with that. I think that's a high priority in my mind.
I'm just passing along the input I received today.
Sure. I would make a suggestion with regard to the next public meeting, if I may move on to that.
Sure. I mean, we can have a discussion about anything.
All right. So the next meeting will be, we hope, will be at the playfields themselves. And notifications, people are hearing about it. I'm wondering if we can't use that opportunity to sort of get an idea of the impacted area, of the construction area that would be impacted, perhaps trees that might be impacted. In other words, we will be there. So it would be good to get maybe a short explanation of the project for those community people that are attending, and a little bit of a show and tell as well. I don't know, spray paint, stakes, something.
Okay. All right. I guess I just want to make one comment. I feel like the majority of information that I've received and that we've gotten through Steve has been in favor of us moving forward with putting the tank in the playfield. I don't know if that's what you all have heard as well, if that's been the consensus.
That's the majority, not
all of it. No, but the majority.
But yeah.
I mean, we haven't had a unanimous issue since other things, but only once. Only once. But it seems to me that it's been the majority is that people would like to see this project get going and move forward. So, any other thoughts before we move on to our regular board meeting?
My one thought was that most of the people who addressed the board this evening were concerned about the amount of time it's taking and the whether or not we intend to do this. And I wanted to say that I'm under the impression that we had decided as a board that we're going to try and move this process forward, and that what we're trying to figure out is the how and what it's going to look like when it's done. Yeah, after it's finished. To the extent that puts some people at ease and disappoints some others who don't want it to happen.
Agreed. That's been my impression as well. Okay. I think that concludes our discussion. We will now adjourn the public hearing. Do I have to have a motion to adjourn, please?
Why don't you do it?
I motion to adjourn the public hearing of the stormwater retention at community playfields.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we'll be moving on to our regularly scheduled park board meeting. Thank you for all coming and giving us your input. We ask that anybody that continues to have ideas or issues can follow up by emailing Mr. Wilson or any of us. All right. It is now 8:06, and I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Park Board of Commissioners. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Abbott.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Pelletin.
Here.
Commissioner Olvani.
Here.
Commissioner Shelley is absent. Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
You have your quorum.
Thank you. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes for the December 10th, 2018 closed session meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. This is a session that we had behind closed doors to discuss certain things that couldn't be discussed in a regular meeting. If there's no further comments on the corrections to the minutes, we can approve them now or go into a closed session later to discuss it. Everybody good with approving them? All right. May we have a roll, or any comments or questions? Anything? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please? Yeah.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the February 11, 2019, the regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Are there any comments or corrections to the regular meeting minutes? This is from our last. Pardon me?
Well, I can't really comment on that.
These are regular meeting minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
These are regular. These are not closed session.
No, I have no comments on that.
The only one I had.
Not my best night here, so I'm sorry. I'm not hearing.
That's okay. The only one I had, I
Correct.
mentioned.
We misspelled Mark Steen's last name for the board president for District 39, so we will correct
Correct
that.
them, please. Thank you. Any other comments or corrections?
No.
Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you.
I'm going to move to approve the February 11, 2019 closed session meeting minutes.
I'll second again.
Thank you. Again, this is, if we need to discuss this, we can go into closed session later. If not, we can vote on them now. Anybody have any discussion for later? All right. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not.
You're not
I would
comfortable?
like to discuss.
You would like to discuss that later?
I suppose so.
Okay. So we won't vote on those now, and we will
Go to closed session later.
session later. Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is communications and correspondence.
Put it all in.
It was all in the stormwater,
Correct.
so I don't believe, did anybody else have any other non-stormwater communications? All right. Hearing none, we will move forward to recognition of visitors. Is there anybody that would like to address us this evening? All right, I don't believe we have anybody that wants to talk to us right now.
Not
Next,
anymore.
not
take it
anymore.
personally.
We got it a lot. Next up, approval of the voucher list.
All right, I move to approve the voucher list in the amount of $1,686,020.54, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments or questions about the voucher list?
I just had one quick question, Steve. The payment to GovHR, is that like a down payment? It seems fairly significant for a progress payment.
It's the first installment on the compensation study. Second payment should be coming out in the next month or so, 30 days, next 30 days.
Okay. I don't remember what the terms were for that, so I apologize.
Total was about $28,000 for the entire study.
And we're going to be paying, it seems like most of that well before the study is concluded.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'll stay here,
Steve,
just in case.
I'm sorry.
More questions.
Just a couple of questions. We had a big payment to Village of Wilmette this
Correct.
month, and so it's sort of, the follow-on questions for that was, it looks like it's related to the rent of the building. Looks like we do it every year. The question was, is this sort of part of an official lease document? Is it an intergovernmental agreement? Is it something that we, have looked at recently? Have we extended it, or is it sort of a handshake? Kind of how does this work, I guess, is the question.
We'll have to go back and look at the documentation that was made between the Park District and the Village.
Yeah, there is a formal agreement. I laid eyes on it approximately 11 years ago, and it's just an annual escalation, but I gotta check it to see if there's terms for when it expires. It outlines the space that we rent within this building, and in turn outlines the space that the village rents from us over at Centennial for the local Comcast station, Channel 6. And so I'd have to put my my eyes on it, and we can bring it to a committee meeting somewhere down the road.
We probably wouldn't have an evergreen agreement, I'm going to guess, or maybe we
doubt
did back
it,
in those
but
days.
who knows? Yeah, it's an older agreement, so we'll have to take a look at it.
Okay, all right.
Brian?
A suggestion for the board. So the large project, the lakefront project, we're paying subcontractors individually as we go, all according to contract. It's hard for me to get a sense of where we are in those payments because, again, I'm not like keeping a running total. So I know that you are. So I was hopeful that perhaps maybe next month we could get an update with regard to the project itself, how much has been paid on how much is, the total amount that we're expecting to pay. Some sort of
schedule.
So we can see how it's going.
Okay, I can do that for you.
Is that all right?
Thank you. Yeah, we were saying maybe at the Lakefront Committee, would that be a good place to have that update, or did you want it?
Well, I don't. Certainly, I'm interested in however I get the information, either through the committee or the full board. I'd leave it to the board to decide.
I'd like
whether or
to
not.
see that.
Okay.
As a full
Bring
board.
it to the whole board?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody's always asking me how much does it cost and are you on budget and all that, right? So I think it'd be nice to know.
If it goes to the Lakefront Committee, it'll get distributed to everybody. I don't know if we want to, do we want to have it at the full board so that we can discuss it on the full board?
No, just report on it.
Okay.
The other question I had for Steve was on the first month financial statements, we were 20% under budget on expenses. Some of that will be timing issues.
Timing issues.
Some of it, hopefully, will be what I call permanent, in the sense, as an example, you budget somebody to start on January 1st, they start on February 1st, you save that. You don't want the department head going out and spending that money that should be saved.
Right.
So I guess for next time around, can we kind of get a feel for, of the 200,000 almost that we got there, how much we can bank on and how much is timing?
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
So may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelleton?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Vanney?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Voucher list is approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you. Coming up in the next 2.5 months, we have many more public input meetings regarding storm water. As we talked about during the public hearing, the next scheduled meeting is anticipated, weather permitting, at community playfields, about community playfields, and that'll be on April 3rd at 6:30. Once again, next month at this meeting, or at the start of this meeting, we'll have a public hearing regarding Hibbard Park, followed by a meeting, hopefully at Hibbard Park, weather depending, on April 24th at 6:30 p.m. And then once again in May, as we will be switching over the board, we will have our last public hearing regarding Thornwood Park here, followed by a public input session, hopefully at Thornwood Park on May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. So stay tuned. We will continue publicizing those through the different avenues that we utilize, including the board brief emails, the monthly newsletter, direct email blasts to all the email that we have in our database. Last, a couple other items. Yesterday was the Going Green Matters event. I saw several of you there in attendance. We were there, as always, at a table marketing our new nature programs. We've hired in a new nature instructor, and she's come up with some very creative and interesting ideas that are actually proving out to be creative and interesting by way of registration numbers over the last week with the resident registration last week. Those numbers will continue tomorrow when non-resident registration begins at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was a nice event, a lot of people there. The event keeps growing every year. Lastly, just wanted to put on everyone's radar, the Wilmette Foundation has some events outlined for 2019, starting with a new event on June 8th down at Gilson, somewhat a celebration of the new beach house and parking lot, but also just an opportunity to have a fundraiser and have a good time with friends and neighbors with a beach party, a tiki-themed beach party down at Gilson Park the evening of June 8th. Turn right around a couple weeks later, and once again down at Gilson, we're going to hold the second Wilmette Open Water, the WOW Swim. That's an open water swim event, early morning, June 22nd. And then this year's golf event, usually it takes place in June, but because of the other events in June, we've moved it to September. And once again, we'll be doing the 9 wine and dine format on September 13th. So looks like a good and busy and fruitful year for the foundation coming up. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Wilson?
Yeah, I had one. I was at Going Green Matters yesterday, and I took note of the shuttles that the Park District had provided since the parking lot was torn up. Do you have any idea, any count on how many people actually used the shuttle?
So I don't have actual counts. I have a little anecdote to share with you. They also had 15 Teslas running people, and people prefer Teslas to school buses. And so our vehicles were not as heavily used as what was reported to me by Jeff Groves today.
I don't want to see any Teslas in the capital budget now.
Oh. Well, make sure we change that.
Any other questions? All right. We'll move along to committee reports. First up is the Lakefront Committee.
Sorry, Ron.
I'm sorry.
We're still talking Teslas. Sorry.
I have a very brief report. The Lakefront Committee met last Monday, March 4th. We got an update on the beach house construction from Jerry Elric, who gave us the good news that the last of the buildings down at the lakefront have been poured. They're poured concrete structures, and so that's a huge hurdle to have overcome. And now they're plumbing and running the electric for them. In addition, the concrete bases for the metal structure that's going to go over the buildings, which then supports the wood structure which goes over the buildings, that's been poured, and they have the metal. That's a big hurdle. If you don't have that in time, that's an issue. And that's being primed off-site. And the Siberian larch, I think, is in transit. If you want more details on it, page 33 of the packet has Jerry's notes. It's cleared customs and is being stored locally until installation.
I read that. I'm like, what the heck is Siberian larch?
Well,
It's from Siberia,
It's
apparently.
a type of wood in Siberia.
Customs in this political environment?
Yes.
That's awesome.
I asked specifically about this because I was concerned that if we need to replace any of it, then we need to go to Siberia to get it.
Exactly.
And
it's hard enough to get heaters for your paddle courts, right? Imagine getting Siberian
But
larch.
there were some compelling reasons for doing it. It was less expensive than some other things, and we should be able to get it. And I think we're going to store some additional Venezuela and Cuba.
We got to start thinking twice about that.
And the big thing, or the biggest concern is when the weather will be warm enough and actually very soon, when the weather will be warm enough for the contractors to finish pouring the concrete curbs in the parking lot, because that's the step that holds up putting any black asphalt down. And they have to put binder down, and then they put the finish coat. But that should progress very quickly once the weather is turned, once the asphalt plants are open, as long as those curbs are poured and in place. So all good in that, and I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood, but I have started telling people once again that Memorial Day seems like it's actually going to happen. So that's, I think that's really good news. Holly reported on camps, lakefront staff is 90% hired, so that means there's still 10% of the staff that needs to be hired. If you have children who are, or adults who are interested, and camp registration, 5 of 8 sections are full, and they're starting to work on the wait lists. The sailing contract deadline was February 18th. 558 out of the 608 contracts were returned. If you can't do the math on your head, that's 50 contracts. 25 of those are not renewing, 25 did not respond. The 25 who did not respond are taken off of the wait list, and so they have spaces available, and the staff has begun calling the people on the wait lists. So there is some movement. We're trying to reduce those wait lists by having changed some policies in the last few years. And the good news is that there is 9 catamaran spots, 8 laser spots, and 23 monohull spots. Only 6 SUPs on the sailing beach. There may be more if you're just interested in parking it down at the south end of the swing beach. Had a couple of communications, some dissatisfied folk, an Evanston couple who was very unhappy about the fact that the parking in the park is restricted during the construction project to Wilmette residents. They thought that that was, I think their word was nasty, and that they were going to encourage the Evanston village government to try and retaliate. And then a Wilmette resident who, by unfortunate circumstance, missed renewing their spot, and 3 years later is saying that they want a spot, and why do non-residents have spots, and that they don't like the system. So it's always interesting at the sailing beach, and I don't envy Holly that in negotiating that. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for the Lakefront Committee?
More drama than substance this time.
When we do get an update on the costs at a future meeting, it would be really helpful to kind of see how the contingencies have played out.
Yep.
You know, I think we still had, even at the very end, I would say almost somewhere between $1 million and $2 million, right, of contingencies. I'd like to see if they're still there and available, or whether they've been used up. And
There has been some change orders that have caused costs to go up, but they are still largely intact. We're actually, and we're through a lot of the more treacherous aspects of the project, so we're actually in a really good place.
Great, that's good to hear.
I second that, yes. I would love to get a contingency update.
And as Ryrie mentioned, we're good with the schedule so far. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, you jinxed it.
It's progress every day.
It is. It is.
And people can still view it on our live
Got the camera there.
webcam if you'd like to see the progress and watch the exciting construction. All right, next up, the Facility Operations Committee.
The Facilities Committee met tonight. It was about 10 minutes. Jason reported on tennis. We have we're helping the Beacon Academy tennis programs with some preseason camp services. So that's new for us. The Pro-Am that Jason and his staff started last year and was super successful, they're doing that again this year, and it's scheduled for May 4th. They're just starting their marketing efforts. Paddle, the ladies' competitive season is over. It finished last week, and the men are in their playoffs this week, with the finals on Wednesday. We have 4 men's teams still playing. Sean reported on the pool. We're still hiring for all positions except the cashier position, which we've filled. Joey and his staff have been attending some conferences. They've been to the Paderma Aquatic Safety Day, and Joey went down to Texas for the Association of Aquatics Professionals Conference. At ICE, our public skate numbers are up from last year. We have spring hockey tryouts this week. ICE is still being used by New Trier girls hockey and some boys programming still. And we have our ICE show coming up May 17th, 18th, and 19th. And then we have an event June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It's called the Ice Sports Industry Conference Championships, and it's a figure skating championship, which is going to bring quite a crowd.
1,000 skaters.
1,000 skaters.
Oh,
yeah.
1,000 skaters.
June 1, 2, 3.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Did I forget anything?
I don't know. They must have talked fast. 10 minutes.
15.
I
It was
drew
15.
that out as long as I could. That's all I have.
I had a question, and Paddle, and I'm not sure if you want to answer this, or maybe Steve, the dryers, some of the dryers have been having some issues. Are we still having issues with sourcing dryers and things like that? Do we know?
They didn't report on that, and I didn't know that was an issue.
Oh, it's been an issue.
It's been
not
an
only
issue
here,
since we
always
opened the
an issue,
facility.
right.
Issue
I mean,
everywhere with
like,
golf carts.
current.
No, I believe last month we had a conversation with Jerry, and they were able to find the dryers,
Okay.
and then they've ordered more to have some
And
more in
backup.
inventory.
Okay.
They're almost treating them at like wear items at this point,
Yeah.
where they just put them in stock. When they blow out, they replace
It's
it.
for
and
light
they
bulbs.
just keep,
Yeah, like light bulbs. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the Facilities Committee? Thank you very much. We'll move along to Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec also met tonight, not as short as the Facility Committee meeting, but most of the time, talking about permit application at the CRC for a pancreatic cancer fundraiser, kind of a mini Taste of Wilmette barbecue competition there. We approved the permit, but allowed staff a chance to go back and take a look at the what fees might be charged, so we don't have an actual amount. They have to go to the village in order to get some village permits as well, so it's not really a done deal yet. It would be August 24th, which happens to be a very sweet spot over there at the CRC, so the view is it's not disrupting activities there. Otherwise, staff held a job fair for seasonal applicants. They had 97 attendees. New Trier was very heavy in their announcements of these and felt it was a very successful job fair for seasonal employees. Last week, staff over at the CRC was Screen Break. It was well attended. The Family Art Fair had 113 participants. Shrek was last weekend and this weekend over at the auditorium. Lose to Win is wrapped up, although there's an extended period. And I think that's about it. We did not have an update on K Nature Center. We'll have one next month, so that's all.
Okay. Any questions for the Parks and Recreation Committee? Hearing none, we'll move forward to golf operations. It says no report. Is there any?
It says it right here.
Okay, no, I didn't know if you, because last month there wasn't one, but you had some information, so I didn't know.
No, I've
Okay.
got nothing to report.
Okay.
Short timer.
It's still closed. The golf course is still closed. We'll move along to Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
Okay, the Financial Planning and Policy Committee met on Monday, February 25th. There were two main items on the agenda. One was the status of the 2018 audit. The field work has been completed. They're working on the financial statements and the notes, and I'm going to guess a management report of some kind as well right now. And then at the end of the process, we'll have the big Bible, the CAFR report with all the information, all the historical information in there as well. So it's kind of a step process, and that CAFR, I think, is available in May, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then the other thing we talked about was sort of a last look at the 2018 financials that were included in the packet. We ended up with a nice fourth quarter. We ended up almost $800,000 ahead of budget. We had $2.2 million operating surplus. Cash was about $13 million. As we head into, obviously, paying off a lot of the stuff related to Lakefront. That's a good place to be. And we did have a fairly detailed discussion about investing of cash. With interest rates now at sort of a level where it's worth actually paying attention to them now. We have the ability, I think, at this point to sort of fine-tune our investing of the cash, moving cash out of operating accounts and into investment accounts to take advantage of the higher interest rates. There's other things. You sometimes keep cash in the operating accounts so that you can generate enough fee income to offset the fees for having the bank accounts. So then that gets adjusted over some time of the year that's pretty low, other times of the year that's high, winter versus summer. So Steve Holloway is going to kind of look at that and kind of look at what we're doing, perhaps look at ways of moving our cash systemically out of operating accounts and into the investment accounts with whatever products are available at the banks. So there's a little bit of work to be done there. But at this point, even though interest rates have been stubbornly low, they're still high enough now that it actually makes a difference, especially when we're sitting on as much cash as we are. So, and then the other point I made that I think we need to kind of keep in all of our back of our minds is that if you take out the property tax revenues in 2018, our operating revenue only grew by 0.6%, so less than 1%. And so that's even with, at the time, price increases that we were trying to put in them, 3%. So the implication there is that the activity level's gone down by a couple of percent. Something to keep an eye on as we go through this year. Our assumption is that we at least maintain the same activity level and get more revenue from the price increases. The reality is we're either, it's a good thing we've had the price increases, otherwise the revenue would have gone down, or maybe, to Brian's case, are we at a point now where we're affecting ourselves in terms of by having prices that are too high? The jury's way out on that, but I think it's something we just got to keep in the back of our minds as we go through another annual process. There's nothing we have to fix right now, but something to keep in the back of our mind.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So could it be that our expenses are increased as well, like on the staff side, the healthcare costs and other things that could be offsetting that?
Oh, I was only talking about the revenue.
Just about revenue,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
no, and obviously cost increases, well, we had a very good year last year in terms of expense management.
Okay.
But as a forward-looking, going out into the future, if we're not growing our activity level at all, that is something we have to keep in mind as we look at our expenses
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
other things.
Okay.
But
There
again,
was a sense, speaking for staff, unless you wanted to say this, Steve, that there was a bit of an aberration with regard to camps last year.
Yeah, there was, and kind of to follow up on what Commissioner Anderson was just saying about expense management, for the most part, most of our operations, when we see registration numbers for things like camp and programs, we then staff accordingly. So as the registration numbers are smaller, our staff numbers are smaller. On our seasonal operations that are weather dependent, when there's rainy days, we send staff home when there aren't daily admissions. So while the revenue didn't grow as much as we had targeted, we managed the expenses where then the net differential was actually larger as compared to budget.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have one question regarding the investment of cash. Do you envision having to create an investment policy statement for the committee in order to give direction to the staff as to what to do?
I think there is one already.
There is one.
Yeah.
There is one.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
review it in conjunction to make sure nothing we consider doing new and different runs afoul of that, because you might remember, I think you were on the board at the time when we started doing the CD investments.
Yes.
We did have to rewrite our investment policy because CDs were not an option per our policy.
Right. And then we changed it to be only CDs issued by banks in the contiguous
FDIC
United
insured. All principal and earnings were FDIC insured.
Yeah, the options that we use are all very conservative
Right.
At this point.
Any other questions for the Financial Planning and Policy Committee? Hearing none, we will move forward to unfinished business on our agenda, the stormwater update. We just had a meeting about that. I'm not sure if there's anything,
I left it on there just in case.
any new information from
Last 5
the
minutes?
last, yeah,
Any changes?
exactly, the last half hour. Given that we've already discussed this, we'll move forward to new business. Does anyone have any new business to bring before the board? All right, next on our agenda is to adjourn to closed session.
Yes, I'm going to take care of that.
Thank you.
Where do I find that piece of paper?
You want me to make a motion?
I think Brian is,
Oh.
you can, yeah, sure. Whatever.
I'd like to move to adjourn to closed session, discuss the minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether for proposed approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes in accordance with Section 2C 21 of the Open Meetings Act.
Second.
Thank you. Maybe we have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes. We'll move to closed session.